Late-night television is a high-wire act where live interviews can go wrong in the blink of an eye. But there's a special kind of on-air disaster that leaves everyone speechless. The awkward walk-off. It's the moment a guest decides they've had enough, abruptly ending the conversation and leaving the host to pick up the pieces. Get ready for some of the most uncomfortable moments on television, because we're counting down the most awkward walk-offs in late-night history. This incredibly awkward moment comes from a 2015 interview with Robert Downey Jr. for the UK's channel. For news, the actor was in London to promote Avengers: Age of Ultron when the interview took a sudden and uncomfortable turn. The interviewer, Krishnan Guru Murthy, began to move away from the movie and started asking Downey Jr. about his past, referencing a quote where the actor had discussed his relationship with his father, dark periods, drug use, and drinking. Guru Murthy then asked if Downey Jr. believed he was free of all of that. It was at this point that the interview completely derailed. A visibly uncomfortable Downey Jr. interrupted the interviewer, asking, "I'm sorry, I really don't. What are we doing?" Before Guru Murthy could continue, the actor got up and walked out of the interview, leaving the journalist to awkwardly wrap up the segment. The moment instantly went viral as a prime example of an interview going horribly wrong. This tense on-air confrontation comes from an Australian news program and features celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay. The interview was set up after a diner at Ramsay's London restaurant, Maze, complained about a poorly cooked steak, but did not want to appear on camera. Reporter Ian Rowley confronted Ramsay with photos of the steak, which the customer described as overdone, burnt, and tasted like rubber, and dry and terrible. Ramsay immediately went on the defensive, questioning why the customer didn't complain. At the time of service, he then launched into a tirade about the request for a well-done steak, arguing that cooking a steak to that degree makes it impossible to judge the quality of the beef because the taste is lost. He called the reporter's question stupid, and as the interview ended, he expressed his disgust, stating, "I thought it was an intelligent interview. What a disaster." This raw and uncomfortable moment comes from a 2011 interview with Kiss frontman Gene Simmons and his longtime partner, Shannon Tweed. The couple, who were starring in their own reality show, sat down for an interview that quickly devolved into a very real and very public argument. The tension began when Tweed expressed her frustration with Simmons' well-known history of infidelity, which she referred to as his philanthropic ways. She stated that after 28 years, and with their children now grown, she was tired of it and didn't want to do it anymore. Simmons, for his part, acknowledged that he needed her to keep his feet to the fire and keep him grounded. The breaking point came after a discussion about another rock star's promiscuous past, when Gene made a joke. Shannon, who was clearly not amused, declared, "It's not funny," and abruptly walked off the set. The interviewer, realizing the fight was not scripted, tried to get her to return, but she refused, saying she was tired and mad, leaving Simmons alone on camera to deal with the fallout. This awkward walkout happened in 1997 during an interview with the Bee Gees on the British talk show Clive Anderson All Talk. Throughout the interview, Anderson repeatedly made jokes at the band's expense, referencing their early names and even calling them crap. At one point, the band, particularly Barry Gibb, became visibly annoyed with the host's constant jabs. The final straw came after Anderson made a joke about one of Barry's solo songs. Barry could be heard muttering, "We're getting to the point where we're not taking the piss out of you, you're taking the piss out of us." After a few more tense exchanges, Barry had enough. He declared, "I'm not having this," stood up and walked off the set. His brothers, Robin and Morris, followed him, leaving a stunned Clive Anderson to wrap up the show by himself. The interview has since become a legendary example of a host pushing his guests too far. This tense moment comes from an interview with Queen guitarist Brian May. The rock legend was being interviewed for a segment when he became visibly frustrated with the process, particularly with being asked to watch and react to old video clips. May initially expressed his annoyance, calling the interview a waste of time and stating that what mattered to him was the show he was about to play that night. He briefly got up as if to leave, telling the interviewer, "I'm sorry, it doesn't work. I'm sorry, guy." Although he did sit back down, the tension remained. The segment ends with the understanding that if the interviewer were to ask another question about the song Bohemian Rhapsody, instead of focusing on his current tour, he would definitely walk out. The clip captures the raw frustration of a musician, tired of repeatedly answering the same questions about his past. This tense moment occurred in 2016, just 19 days before the presidential election. During an interview with then-candidate Donald Trump, NBC4 reporter Colleen Marshall directly questioned Trump about labels he had received during the campaign. Marshall asked, 19 days out from the election, "You've been labeled a racist. You've been labeled a sexist. How do you respond to that?" Trump leaned into the microphone and gave a short, definitive reply, "I am the least racist person you've ever met." Immediately after delivering that line, Trump turned and walked away from the interview, leaving the reporter and her crew standing on the tarmac. The abrupt end to the interview highlighted the contentious nature of the campaign. This interview walkout comes from a 2022 appearance by Kanye West on the show Piers Morgan Uncensored. The discussion became immediately contentious when Morgan challenged YA about an anti-Semitic tweet he had recently posted. Morgan repeatedly pressed Y to apologize for the offensive language in his tweet, which he said stepped on the entire Jewish people's toes. Ye refused to give an unconditional apology. Instead, he stated he would only apologize if top executives from Hollywood, the NBA, the NFL, and the music industry would meet with him to publicly compare the contracts of their top earners, live on air. Following Y's refusal to apologize without his conditions being met, Morgan declared the interview adjourned. Even as the host tried to wrap up, Y continued to defend his statements, claiming his words were on behalf of God and that God is definitely using me. This interview walkout is the second from Kanye West on the show Piers Morgan, Uncensored, taking place 2 years after his first contentious appearance. Morgan explains that he invited YA back on the show to hold him accountable for a recent spiral of endless, outrageous anti-Semitic slurs on X, including professing love for Adolf Hitler and saying Jews were better as slaves. The interview was plagued with issues from the start, with Y and his friend Sneo causing significant delays and expenses for the production crew. Just minutes after the interview finally began, Ye became agitated when Morgan brought up his social media posts. After a brief, tense exchange about the number of followers he has, Ye abruptly stood up and walked off the set. His friend Sneo attempted to defend the walkout, claiming Y was upset that Morgan had patronized him by misstating his name and follower count. The interview then devolved into a heated argument between Morgan and Sneo, with Morgan pressing him on Y's obsession with Hitler and Sneo accusing Morgan of working for Israel and promoting genocide. Sneo eventually walked out as well, leaving Morgan to call Y a sniveling little coward and an anti-Semite and a Hitler worshipper to an empty chair. This on-air meltdown comes from an interview with Jordan Belfort, the infamous Wolf of Wall Street, on the Australian version of 60 Minutes. The interview took a hostile turn when the reporter began questioning Belfort about his financial arrangements, specifically asking if an oral contract he had with a company was an attempt to hide income from his victims. Belfort immediately became defensive, shutting down the line of questioning with a curt next question. He then launched into a tirade against the interviewer, stating that he had been told it would be a friendly interview, and that no one had ever treated him as disrespectfully as she had. As his anger escalated, Belfort abruptly ended the interview, ripping off his microphone and storming off the set. The moment perfectly captured the volatile temper that had made him a notorious figure in the financial world. This fiery on-air moment comes from a 2014 CNN interview with the legendary comedian Joan Rivers. The interview was intended to promote her new book, Diary of a Mad Diva, but it took a hostile turn when the interviewer began to question Rivers' comedic style. The tension started when the interviewer brought up the shock value of Rivers wearing fur on her book cover, suggesting it was done to upset animal rights activists. Rivers immediately became defensive, questioning if the interviewer was wearing leather and dismissing the criticism as nonsense. She then accused the interviewer of being negative and unfit to conduct an interview with a comedian, stating that the whole point of her work was simply to make people laugh. The situation escalated until Rivers abruptly stood up and walked out of the interview. Even after she left the set, her microphone remained on, capturing her continuing to use expletives off camera, confirming that her anger was anything but an act. This interview with Machine Gun Kelly at the Billboard Hot 100 Festival takes a sharp turn right at the very